Batman and Robin is maybe the most memorable Batman movie for all of the wrong reasons. It was a meme before memes were even a thing. For good reason. It's a live-action cartoon that couldn't take itself seriously even if it tried. Which it does not. But in a movie where every performance is a punchline, in a sea of so bad they're good performances, there dared to be one that was actually almost unironically good. You know, if you're grading on a curve. This includes the returning cast as well. With the exception of Alfred Pennyworth, because honestly that man was a national treasure. Uma Thurman's time as Poison Ivy might just be the one redeeming decision this mistake of a movie made. Now that's not to say that she feels out of place here. Quite the contrary, actually. She's right at home. Acting every bit as campy and over the top as the cast that she shared a screen with. She's hammy, she's cheesy, she's goofy beyond belief. Though unlike her partners in crime, I think this theatrical performance works wonders for the part that she's playing. Actually, I would argue that this characterization suits the character. Poison Ivy has always been a self-righteous green enthusiast that treats plants as if they were people, treating those that pick flowers like they're murderers and those that cut their grass as genociders. She hates humanity and blames them for not protecting her precious babies, justifying actual murder due to trimming some hedges. Her very nature and enthusiasm for nature puts her in the over-the-top category already. So Uma Thurman giving an over-the-top performance is just sort of the perfect pairing. And while she's definitely kicking things up to an 11 at all times, I wouldn't say that her performance was all that bad. Sure, this is being played for laughs, but it doesn't feel too far off from other on-screen versions of the villain. Even some of the more iconic iterations of this rogue, actually. Like the out-at-the-time Batman the Animated Series. Take away the substance and add in a laugh track, and I don't see all that much of a difference. You have to remember that Poison Ivy's motivations, and even her speech patterns, don't really vary from interpretation to interpretation. She is widely the same, even if the stories are wildly different. No matter what the case is, she humanizes plants and demonizes human beings, constantly complaining about gardening problems on a grand scale. My point is that for as awesome of a character as Poison Ivy can be, I think inevitably she's always going to come off at least a little bit much, for lack of a better word. She's always going to be at least a little bit goofy. So having the movie make her intentionally goofy doesn't bother me nearly as much. Despite having a very different tone, Schumacher's Poison Ivy still stays in line with the character from the comics. As a matter of fact, out of all the antagonists in this adaptation, and to a lesser extent the movie that came out before it, I would argue that she is the most accurate adaptation. Sure, Mr. Freeze shares his animated series origins, but he has none of his charm or characterization. Gone was the Shakespearean tragedy, and in its place was puns that would make the 66 show blush. Bane still got the body, but he's lost all of his brain, looking like the character from the comics, but being made into a brainless brute to do Poison Ivy's bidding. Both bad guys are completely lost in translation. Mr. Freeze has made a joke and Bane is turned into a heavy, but Poison Ivy still feels like Poison Ivy. Out of everybody in the movie, she's really the only rogue that resembles her source material self. And I mean that both in terms of depiction and design, because I think this character really excelled aesthetically. She looked plucked straight from the comics. Pun intended. Not in the sense that she wore these outfits there, but these outfits are ones that you could easily see that character wearing. Her look complements her larger-than-life personality. It's loud and obnoxious. It demands attention when you're in its presence. Much like the character. Joel Schumacher was a visionary, with an emphasis put on vision. He wasn't a big picture kind of guy, but he made every frame in one of his movies look like a photograph. As a matter of fact, he was convinced Uma Thurman was right for the role, not after seeing some previous performance, but instead after seeing her on the cover of a magazine. Schumacher felt that she was the most beautiful woman in the world, which means his casting of her was entirely up to how she'd fill out the outfit rather than how she'd play the part. Not a great way of choosing who to cast necessarily, but it's hard to argue that she wasn't the right choice for that costume. I've seen plenty of people over the years cosplay this part. I'm talking good cosplayers who put a lot of time, investment, and money into their craft, and none of them ever even come close to looking like this. There's just something about this particular person in this specific part. I think she just had the right look for this look. It should also be noted that her wacky wardrobe served a purpose. The costumes weren't exactly subtle, but the fact that they're visual representations of her transformation seemed to get lost in translation, with each attire being inspired by a stage of metamorphosis, showcasing both the progression of her condition from the accident and her full turn to the dark side. So by the climax, she's gone full Venus flytrap supervillain, and it's actually kind of awesome. I'm not going to dance around it. This may be an unpopular opinion, I'm not really sure, but this design is definitive to me. When I think of Poison Ivy, I think of this. Once again, look-wise.
Great stems. Buds, too. Yeah, those are nice.
In terms of her performance, I think it's only bad in the sense that it fits the tone of a bad movie. Yes, it's non-stop nonsense. It's all style and no substance. And it could come off so dialed up that Broadway actors playing to the cheap seats might see this and tell her to tone it down. But it's Batman and Robin. If there was ever a place to play this part, it's here. Uma Thurman feels like a femme fatale pulled straight from the '66 series. I would even argue that she's in the same vein as that show's Catwoman, with the two being overly theatrical seductresses. They also share a similar style, what with the two both having the jumpsuit with a belt look. My point here is that I think that she'd be more endeared had she played the part there as opposed to here. So I think it's ultimately less about her and more about the project that she was a part of. Because people don't fondly remember Batman and Robin. So people don't fondly remember things about Batman and Robin. Being the best part of the worst Batman movie just equates to taking part in the worst Batman movie. Out of everyone who participated in Batman and Robin, Uma seems to be the only one who did so without any regrets. From all I've seen, read, and heard over the years, she's the only one to have never said a bad word about her time working on set, actually referring to it as a nice creative experiment on at least one occasion. And you know what? I think that definitely comes across. While Arnold looked like he was having fun at the expense of the project, Uma feels like she was having fun by playing into it, with her contribution feeling more welcome and significantly less distracting. But there are definitely things about this variant of the villain that I'm none too fond of. Whatever complaints I have about the character have very little to do with the actual actress playing her. I just think that the character overall comes across as very repetitive. She almost at times feels like a gender-swapped version of Jim Carrey's Riddler. It's never a good sign when you can use the same specific description to describe two separate characters. In Batman Forever, Jim Carrey is an overly emotional redhead with glasses looking to take revenge on their former employer, who unknowingly wronged them in some way. In Batman and Robin, Uma Thurman is an overly emotional redhead with glasses looking to take revenge on her former employer who unknowingly wronged her in some way. It's not just the backstory, they share similar mannerisms as well, as both act comedically unhinged to a cartoonish degree, chewing their way through all of the scenery. I would even go as far to say that some of the scenes with this character are carbon copies of scenes with that other character, which is the movie that just came out before this. But don't worry, it's not just the last movie's bad guy this movie's bad guy takes from. She also takes from the bad guy from the last movie, as her backstory is basically borrowed from Batman Returns as Catwoman. Both Selina Kyle and Pamela Isley have near identical origins. Both women were transformed into supernatural supervillains after their boss attempted to take their life. Both women then of course take revenge on their former employers, killing them off with a kiss goodbye, only to then get into conflict with the Caped Crusader.
Why are all the gorgeous ones homicidal maniacs? Is it me?
The problem is, this version of the villain was created from the ribs of other characters that were done much better. Rogues that were still at the time recent and in the general public's memory. This cheapens the character. Also, I don't love the love triangle this movie puts together. It's haphazard and half-assed.
You never said anything about a wife!
It also doesn't feel like a love triangle considering one of those people is barely present. It also doesn't feel like a story that Ivy would find herself in. I don't know that this was a necessity. I don't think it really added a lot to the plot. I think if anything, all it did was discredit Ivy, making her seem like an overly jealous, boy-crazy, dysfunctional mess. I don't know, Ivy having an interest in anything she didn't need to water and keep out in the sun feels like a stretch to me. She just doesn't have an attachment to people the way she does to plants. If anything, she has a total hatred of humanity. So I can't really see her falling head over heels and getting jealous of a man's love for his frozen wife. Ivy doesn't love. To be honest, she doesn't even really like. She just uses the lust of others through pheromone to get them to do her bidding. Love and lust are just weapons for her to use. She manipulates through emotion, so seeing her be manipulated by emotion just feels like a failure of the character as opposed to a fixture. I know some continuities have put her together with Harley over the years, and I'm willing to accept that as her one exception, but even in saying that, I find that pairing tolerable at best. Just not really my favorite use of Ivy, because in my opinion, Poison Ivy should be colder than Mr. Freeze. This may just be one of my most controversial Batman opinions, but I mean it when I say it. I ironically love Batman and Robin, but I unironically kinda love Uma Thurman's Poison Ivy. If there was anybody from this project I'd like to see return to the role they played, it would undoubtedly be her. Because I think that she played the part well for the project that she was a part of. She was a good, goofy Poison Ivy, but I also think if given the chance, she could probably play a much more menacing version of the Menace. This plant just needs a better environment to grow and thrive in. Having said all that, I hope you enjoyed me tanking my credibility by saying I like something about Batman and Robin. And if you want to ruin your credibility and let me know that you like this video, and you'd also maybe want to see more Batman content here on the channel, let me know in the comment section below by leaving a comment saying,
I think that's Poison Ivy.
I am vengeance. I am the night, and that was V Infuso. Just remember, if you're not tuning in, then you're missing out.
So, if you like the words that came out of his mouth hole, and you too would like to become a V-generate, don't forget to like and subscribe. Thanks for watching, nerds!
And if you're not joining the fun, you're in for one bad day. And you know what they say about having one bad day?
Catch him next time. Same bat time. Same bat channel.